Good afternoon. Hello, hello. I see Ron. Seeing who else we got on video here. Hi, Bonnie. Welcome. Hi. Hello, hello. Your name is coming up as K1, but I'm still saying hi to you. He's smiling. How are you?
That is
hi,
his
Stacy.
name. K1.
Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're right. Yeah.
Good to see you, brother.
Yes, welcome. Hi, Stacy. Hi, Mitzi. Welcome. Hi. Okay. Oh, we got a chat. Well, Ada, good afternoon, Ada. And Craig. Hi, Rosa. Welcome. Hi. Oh, if you ever want to change, if you ever do, oh, my name's Stacy Green. Speaking of which, I logged in to do my talk with Remax Escarpment and they said, you see, your name says Stacy Green. If you ever want to change it, it's just in the upper right corner where there are the 3 dots. You can change your name to whatever you'd like. There we go. Okay, let me see if Shannon, I think she's coming off a call. We'll start momentarily. Hi, Armando, welcome. Hi. And I forgot to tell you guys where this background was. I put it up, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before. And I said I was going to tell you where it was, and I opened it up for guesses, and nobody guessed it. So before I say where it is, I'm going to one more time, there's Shannon, I'm going to one more time give an opportunity to guess where this is behind me, because it's a beautiful, beautiful spot. And I'll give a hint for those of us in Ontario, it's driving distance. That should help, because somebody guessed Amalfi, which I love and would usually be posting, but it is not Amalfi. Do you know where it is, Shannon? Like she's no. I'm seeing there's nobody in chat with this one yet. Okay, and we're 101, so we're gonna get started. But it's Bon Echo. That's Bon Echo Park. So it's just north. So my cottage area is Havelock. So for us, we go east and then north. So it's north of Kingston, probably, or north of Belleville. I'm trying to think where it would line up with, but it's absolutely beautiful. They've got the pictographs, the kind of native drawings out right on the stone, and you can hike up and see to a lookout point over the sunset. It's a provincial park. It's absolutely breathtaking, and people still do spirit quests there. They used to believe it was like a healing place. It's absolutely amazing. Oh, Mitzi says north of Kingston. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places in the entire world. My kids are always like, why are we camping? We have a cottage. Like, it's not the same. It's fantastic. All right, Shannon, are you unmuted?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to share the slides in a second, but I feel like sometimes we jump into content, and I think, you know, today is a really important topic because it's the 10 top mistakes that are going to cost us listings. And for a lot of us, those listing opportunities are so vital. And, you know, sometimes I think it's difficult in a business where, again, you know, missing one objection handle, missing one listing opportunity can cost us a really large sum of money, right? For some of us, it could be anywhere 7,500 all the way up to 20,000 plus, and much, much more. For some people who might be on this call. And for those of you who are with teams, which we work with team environments, that loss or that gain is exponential. So increasing your conversion rates, either from, you know, leads to face-to-face opportunity or a face-to-face opportunity to an actual listing, is not just a one-off in a team, right? As soon as you increase that across the team, you have multiple people doing so much more business. So for us, these systems are really important because they're what allow us to duplicate and get consistent results. So that's why in a team, sometimes there's a little bit more stringent training, because the team is investing in the opportunities. And if they don't come back, that could be a really dangerous thing to do as a business owner. So they create an environment where the odds are stacked in their favor, not against them, in their favor, where they're doing training to ensure that they have a higher likelihood that the agent's going to be successful and the team's going to be successful, which is really important. What's amazing is that when you take team systems and you apply them in individual agents' businesses, they catapult the results. Shannon and I, Ron, Sandra, Kelly, Lucia, we have all worked with individual agents who have put team systems, sales processes in their business. And we've had people double their business, triple their business just in the last 12 months. The 12 months before that, the exact same thing. Half of our biggest growth gains for clients were individual coaching clients, which is really cool. So we basically take that team philosophy, team mentality, and literally the team systems and training, and they have a huge growth. And then obviously for teams, we see the same thing, but I think that's a little more evident. So I want Shannon to start before we get into our top 10. Can you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, overall, but also your experience and how it's relevant and tangible for anyone, individual agent, all the way up to team, because we have a team language that we've developed over time that not everybody's, been in team culture like you and I have for so long. So could you explain just before we jump in?
Sure. I've been working with Kathleen for over the last decade. And for me, I was lucky to be born into this systems that we actually train and teach people on. And one of the things that I'm known for, I'm a realtor as well, is creating one of the largest inside sales departments in Canada, where we produced about 200 firm deals per year, purely from online lead sources. And myself, I facilitated over 500 firm deals purely from online lead sources. So what I've learned how to do through these systems is how to perfect when you're speaking with any type of opportunity, whether it's online lead or not, what key analysis questions you're going to ask people, how you determine if they're a mark now or later. And in this scenario, if they're a listing, somebody who's going to list first, what's the time frame I ideally want to book them within? How do I convey my value to them so they want me to be in front of them? And then once we get in front of them, what are the key things we need to do to close them? So after kind of getting to the point where I could in inside sales, I then started moving more to the outside sales aspect to learn all those techniques once
Shannon,
you've got in front of them to how to get on that side. Sorry.
what's the difference between inside sales and outside sales, and
sorry.
How would an agent equate inside sales to their business? What part of the business would that be for them?
So inside sales, what that means is there's some teams who've had the ability to grow enough that they can actually develop a department or even just one person where what their focus is to nurture all leads that come into the company and nurture them until they're ready. And when they are ready, have the ability to book that lead and then say to their outside sales team, okay, John or Armando or whoever, Tuesday at 6, you've got a listing appointment. You just need to show up and do it. The people are ready to list. So the concept of an inside sales team is allowing all that prospecting that outside agents don't love to do, being done on the inside for them. And then when they're ready to meet, the outside sales agent just focuses on their unique ability, which is meeting people and turning the deal. Now, does that mean that every individual agent and every team needs an inside sales? Absolutely not. Okay, it's a great thing to have down the road, but what we do is we take those techniques of conversion and we apply them, whether you're an individual agent or a team, so that you're using the proper language, so you're getting your best return on investment of every opportunity you're coming in contact with. Did that answer it, Kathleen?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, if you're calling people who are potential to buy or sell and you're talking to them, you're following up with them in CRM, and then eventually you're deciding when to meet with them, that's exactly what an inside sales does. They just do it all day long. Like that's their main role. Mm-hmm. So Shannon's department that she did was responsible for 500,000 dials every single year. So they're making a lot of phone calls to book a lot of appointments. Now, not all of those appointments lead to appointments, but we lead to deals, but we know exactly how many lead to appointments, lead to a contract, lead to a deal. So it's all tracked and measured, which is a really amazing side of it, because it means we can duplicate and help people have the exact same conversion overall, because we know what's possible. So Shannon has a mindset that's very systematic, and as do I. So sometimes I know when people hear very systematic approaches to business, they either go, I really relate to that, and that's like a good feeling for me, or they go, oh, that seems kind of cold to me. I don't really relate. I don't know if I want to do business that way. The key of why teams work so well is they know they need all the perspectives. and they need all the voices. They need the systematic approach. They need the metrics so that they can use their intuition in other places, like face-to-face with clients and connecting and communicating and really building rapport with people. But we want the systems to give us that predictable approach that's going to consistently deliver a lot of value across the table, no matter who we're meeting with. So the mistakes we're going to talk about today are across the board, from warmest lead opportunity all the way to coldest opportunity you can even imagine that you're able to potentially book a face-to-face appointment with. So they're really valuable tips and techniques. Some of them, when you hear them, one of the top things that Shannon and I hear all the time is, it seems so simple. They're not telling, like Ron jokes, because once I did an email, I'm like, this is the secret sauce, right? Everybody wants the secret sauce in team building, but it's really the secret sauce in team building is that we actually build. We build a consistent first layer that takes us to our second layer, to our third layer, to our fourth layer. Whereas in real estate, a lot of the time we're doing these jumps. So it's like, okay, we're going to create something new and we do this big jump and we have all this energy and eventually your jump comes back down. In business building, it's like we need to actually create a duplicatable system and something that we can legitimately build on. So we're not jumping up to step one, we're walking up because we built it and therefore we can build step two. So it's a slow, consistent process that has massive returns in the long run. So it's a little bit different of a approach. So I'm going to share the screen and we are going to talk about, just one second.
Well, you share the screen. Can I just add one thing too?
Of course, yes, please.
Because you were making a great comment about how sometimes people think, oh, it's too systematic, it's too cold. I just like to make people feel that I'm genuine. The reality is 100% we do as well. We're very deep rooted in the consultant approach and making things about the client, what's in it for them, making them feel comfortable, educating them. And I've always treated everybody as if they were a friend or family member, because I genuinely wanted to come from a place that they were taken care of. The system allowed me to just have a path, so I knew where I was going and got a desired outcome.
I find, Shannon, like being face to face with the number of people that I was, and even now with coaching, like it's a lot easier to connect with people in an organic, legitimate way when my brain's not trying to remember what to say and what to do.
Totally.
Right? So I think ironically, resisting a path or a set approach actually stops me from connecting with people at a deeper level. So I'm really glad that you said that, because I don't think I would have been able to do it if I didn't have my sales approach down pat at the beginning. In fact, I know personally for me, I wouldn't have been able to do it. The numbers that I did, it just wouldn't have been possible. So we're going to go through top 10 mistakes that cost you the listing, whether it's remote or not. So our listing system approach has gone remote, not 100%, but in majority, in some cases 100%, which is really neat, across a lot of our networks and platform. And I see somebody put something in chat. I don't know if you can see it, Shannon. It's not letting me open it.
Yes, but I don't know the answer. Are you going to be sharing these slides, or do they need to take notes?
Yeah, we can share these slides. Actually, I don't have a problem with that. So Stacy can send it out in a PDF. Yeah. You probably still will want to take notes, just heads up, because Shannon and I are going to add things to every single one of the slides. So that's just, being honest. Okay.
And Ron, Andrew loves your Wally yacht. Okay.
Loves,
sorry.
What? Okay.
Yacht in the background that he's
on. I didn't see that. Okay, got it. Okay, so 10 things that we do not want to do. Shannon and I are going to kind of go back and forth. She's going to talk about some of the points. I'm going to talk about some of them. We have a bonus that we're adding in at the end, which will be great. And we'll kind of expand on them. So number one, most important, we talked about this in the buyer consultation, how to have a very strong remote buyer consultation. Listing consultation, it's just as important. In fact, it might even be more important, because right now, specifically, in time of COVID, there are a lot of stories and examples shared where agents are really getting in the way of their own opportunities for the future, and they're assuming outcomes with sellers. And we never want to assume anything. We just want to offer a process. So mixing up our role versus the client's role gets us in the way of our own opportunities. So sometimes we just have to get out of the way and give people choices so they can move forward. And those choices have to include educating the client. So our role is, as it says here, to show them how quick, easy, hassle-free, affordable it can be to move one step at a time forward using our resources. How we do that is by educating. That's how we do that. We make it quicker, easier, more affordable to move one step forward by going over the pros and cons with their specific situation and letting them know what the next step would be. So, step one would be having a certain number of questions so we can figure out what their needs are, what's important to them, what their wants are, what their timing is. And from there, we might offer a consultation, we might offer a follow-up. That process of what we offer next is our role. Deciding for them whether they should take that next step or not does not make sense. If they are, if they're saying there's no way I can get financing in the next 10 years, then hey, you may choose not to offer that next step. You still guide the process. But for anybody who's expressing a potential need to buy or sell, in this case, sell, we want to be prepared to offer options, because in COVID specifically, it's really easy to get our mind in a place of, it's, is it essential for you to sell right now? Should you even be talking to a realtor? It's easy for our small mind to go into judgment, because judgment's quick and easy and definitive, and it kind of gets the pressure off of us to figure out solutions. But the reality is that some of those people who call you or might talk to you or might express an interest in selling, you may not initially think they're essential. And as you educate them in the process, they may decide to hold off. We don't even know yet. And if they hold off, you have a better chance that they're going to list with you in the future. You may also find out that their circumstance is more essential than you thought it was. You might be an agent who is, still has high demand in your area, and you're finding you can service sellers, even some exclusively, because they can get a great price they're happy with now. We don't want to have a blanket, decision for sellers until we've taken the time to educate them so they can decide what's best for themselves and their family. So number one, really important, biggest mistake we make is making decisions for the seller, whether they should sell, whether they should sell at a certain price, which we're going to talk about later on, whether they're willing to pay our commission because they're calling us and saying, what's your commission rate on the phone? We don't want to assume anything. Remember, if you have a strong sales process, people can never determine a cost unless they understand your value. If you have not been, on a Zoom or expressed your value to a seller, they have no way of knowing if they're willing to pay for it or not. Expecting them to know that up front when they call you doesn't make sense. Shannon, over the years, what would you say, and any feedback, because this actually isn't one of our other points, so I just want to get your feedback. I know my personal feedback, but I want yours. When people say to you on the phone, what's your commission? I'm only interviewing 1%, and whether you guys are 1% or not, this is just an example. I'm only interviewing 1% agents. Would that affect ever, Shannon, whether you book that appointment or not? And why or why not?
Absolutely not, because the reality is most people who will advertise that they list for 1%, if you end up looking at their stats, they end up listing for much more, and they're doing it as a lead generation source. I try to never get into actual points or numbers on the phone, because I know that if I were to say, let's say I range from 3.5 to 6 or 10, doesn't even matter. Even the minute they even heard 3.5, they're going to think, oh, that's more than 1. And I haven't even got a chance to show my value. So I want to make sure that I get a chance to get in the door. So I'm going to try to avoid even talking about numbers until I get a chance to show them what they're getting with me.
Absolutely, for sure. And we don't really know until we get there. And have you had agents list homes from people who on the phone said they were only going to list for 1% for significantly more?
All the time,
yeah.
Because the reality is it's the only people who would ever not go to that appointment would be people who get in their head and think there's no point in even trying. They've already made their mind up. They're listing for 1%. But the reality is likely, if they've contacted that agent with the 1%, they haven't heard very exciting things on that phone call. And I know that if I get in front of them and have the ability to convey all the things I'm going to do, cost is only an issue in the absence of value.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, for sure. So number one, biggest, most important, let's not waste our time, hopefully, on all the, potential problems that could happen, and instead focus on creating the solution. And the solution is offering the appropriate next step. That might be a follow-up, that might be, an online appointment, but if we can train our mind to focus on those next steps, we'll have significantly more listing opportunities. So this one is a really important one. Number 2 of top 10 biggest mistakes that cost us the listing. Shannon and I work with a lot of top producing agents. You know, they do an extremely high volume of business. Several, you know, on their own will do 80 deals plus, 100 deals plus. We've had people do 130 deal plus on their own sometimes, which I cannot imagine. But we know ego can be a really big one. And it was important to bring up here because there are times when we'll notice that teams in the area will start to go up against other top listing agents and they don't have a team or they're on their own, and they'll start to consistently get the listing over and above that top listing agent. And we always really listen to feedback, and the sellers will consistently give the feedback that, oh, you know what, they came in, they didn't really talk to us, they seem to think, you know, that we should be begging for their business, and they didn't want to list with them. So it's in our training, we really focus on rapport. You know, even if you know the specific upgraded hardwood that they have or the certain type of tile, it's really important to communicate that to the seller. Even if you already are taking detailed notes on everything and you know their house model inside out and backwards, it's important to tell them that. People care about what we know when they know we care. And we really notice this even on teams with the top producers in the team, when they start to get it like, well, I'm, you know, believing you're the best, I think is actually really important as a listing agent, but believing you're the best and you're better than the people who help you become the best and give you and trust you with their service, that's a completely different idea. We want to be the best because we know we're going to serve and care for and outperform the majority of other agents in the area. That's a really different place. That's from a place of confidence. Ego of, you know what, I list more than anybody else and they should want to work with me, and I'm not, you know, I don't have gratitude or appreciation for the opportunities in front of me, that will cost you a lot of business. So we care what you know when we know that you care. And when you get so good at what you're doing that you stop explaining the steps to your clients, there's a major loss that happens there. And we're going to have 2 slides for this one because communication is really important. And some of you on here are on teams, some of you on here are thinking about this with buyers or sellers. But with our sellers, even a great listing presentation, we're going to talk about this later, but you always have the best communication is always four layers deep. Okay. And this is really important. So, you know, with our team, I could come on our leadership meeting and I could say, this is, you know, I've already decided this is what we're going to do. And I'm just assuming that whatever I choose is absolutely okay in my way or the highway. Number 2 is at least I say it. So I communicate, you know, we're going to do it this way. Number 3 is I say it with reasons. So I actually explain why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. And I think it's important that people understand what my perspective is. 4 layers deep is the most important. I say it and actually I didn't put it there, but I should have. I say it, I explain my reasons, and I ask for feedback. That's 4-level deep communication. And that's what we always want to have to avoid getting into that ego place of, oh, I already know how to do it. I can just do it in my head. I don't have to communicate to the seller. You want to let them know why you're doing it, what you're doing, sorry. You want to let them know why you're doing it. You want to back it up with evidence, and you want to ask them for feedback, which we're going to talk about more when we ask for feedback and how we ask for feedback so we can position ourselves as experts. So really, really key. And I know Shannon's done hundreds of these calls asking for feedback on why we didn't get the listing, which is just as valuable as why we did get the listing, because we learn and grow so much from this. And arrogance, ego, pompousness, like these are all words that come up a significant amount when we don't get listings, and that is not a positive thing. And I think sometimes as drivers, a lot of top listing agents are drivers. It can be easy to get in the house and just do what we do because we trust ourselves to do it so well, but we're actually costing ourselves the rapport with the people who would benefit by working with us. So want to slow down and take that time to connect. Rapport always precedes sale decisions. People make decisions based on how they feel, and they use logic to justify those decisions. That's how it always goes. How I feel, I will use logic to justify how I'm feeling, which we've talked about extensively during COVID, why it's so important to not be focused on what I can't control, be in that ego small mind, and move to a place where I feel good, I feel open, and I can focus on solutions. This is so really important because I'm just not in awareness and if I'm in that small mind. So Shannon, did I miss any other words, how it might be communicated when a client just didn't have those warm, loving feelings and that's why they didn't choose the listing agent? Anything else I'm missing that comes back from sellers when they don't pick us? in
No, I
that
think
arena?
an example of it would be that sometimes when people become top producers and list a lot of homes, to some degree, they start to become almost numb to this is just the process. I go in, I look at a home, I sit down with them, we go through pricing, we do this, that, and the other. And they forget that these people, like their home is their pride and joy. They put a lot of effort into everything they've done. They probably cleaned up a lot for people to come, done their gardens, whatever it might be. And I always remember hearing the one feedback saying, and this was from somebody who owned an absolutely beautiful high-end home. And they said the agent walked through and it just seemed like they didn't say anything about the house. They didn't say they liked anything. They didn't give any compliments. We didn't even think that she liked the home. And I thought, what? Like, are you kidding me? Like, you don't have to go overboard and make it seem like you can list for 2 million when it's only 1 million. But I'm saying, like, just the fact that they had worked so hard to make sure it was meticulous inside, and the agent was just so numb to doing it. They just didn't build any rapport in that way at all. And it just really made a huge difference. That's why in my business, I have always made it a point to make people feel like friends or family and feel so comfortable, because that's what people deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's whether you're task oriented or you're relationship oriented, the end game is the same. When people feel good and they feel cared about, or they feel acknowledged, whatever it is, they have good feelings, and then they use that logic to make a decision to either hire you, or they have bad feelings and they make a decision not to hire you. So rapport is always at the beginning and at the end, and continuously, obviously, but it's always at the beginning. So really, really key. So I think that with this example, Shannon, it's, talking about, wow, the home will show really well. You've done a fantastic job with this. What have you guys done to do improvements? Like even just that, and explaining, I'm asking you this because I want to be really detail oriented. So when I market the home, I have everything I possibly need to shine a positive light on the property. That's saying it, explaining why, and getting feedback, right? So that they can follow your path and they actually know why you're asking, instead of assuming that they can connect the dots on why we're doing what we're doing when they're not in real estate all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And Shannon, you want to talk to us about number 3?
Sure. Oh, not asking the right questions every time. Do you go on listing appointments that are not ready to actually list yet? Yeah, this is definitely a big one. I think that so many agents in this industry view that the only way they can show people value is to kind of do work for them when people aren't even necessarily ready to even pull the trigger, if you will. And what I noticed is that often if a listing wasn't signed, it was because we were meeting with people outside of a time frame where they could mentally hear what it was we were saying, see the value in it, and want to commit to us at the end. That's why in our system, we really try to stay to a more streamlined, like we don't meet with people unless they're within a specific time frame, because the reality is if they're a year, 2 years out from listing, and I'm sitting in front of them today doing a listing presentation, giving them value, etc., they're not going to really want to sign a listing with me at the end of the day. So often that would be a reason why listings weren't signed, for sure. Pushing script to alienate. What do you mean by the second one, Kathleen?
So this is kind of the right questions on the phone. So, do you have a list of consistent questions that you're asking before you decide if you should book the appointment? And
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So 100%. There's key questions that you always want to make sure that you ask. And the reality is when you're speaking to people, whether it's on the phone, it's at the grocery store, an open house, it doesn't matter. If they have a home that they want to sell, the whole process needs to be made about them. And one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen a lot of agents do is they make the process about themselves rather than the client. They try to push the listing when maybe the people really just wanted to know what was available on the market first and find something before they downsize. They know their home's beautiful. They know it's going to sell quickly, but they just want to focus on what's out there. But instead, the agent's on the phone breaking rapport and pushing the listing when that's not what's important to the client. Or rather than asking what these people's time frame truly is, the agent's pushing the time frame and saying, you need to do this now. This is basically making it all about them and their transaction versus really even caring what's important to the client to begin with, which is how you ultimately build the best rapport. And as a byproduct, you're going to get the listing anyway if you just come from a genuine place.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, it's difficult when you have a certain approach and you don't get to see the outcome as it might have been if we approached it differently. Like, for example, you know, if we're getting on calls and we're making offers because we're trying to get people who are looking to list within the next 3 months, we may not even realize it, but our language is alienating people who are further out. And those follow-ups are vital to us. Shannon, I know in inside sales, I mean, the follow-ups are going to deliver more listing appointments than the initial new leads.
Oh, totally. And yeah, you're exactly right. I think that often people also run their business. This is what Kathleen's saying of, if you're here and ready now, I'll do business with you. But if you're not ready for a little bit longer, maybe within the next 6 months, I'm probably going to drop you and not even bother to really continue to follow up with you, when really there was still huge opportunity there. My mindset was just that I only want people who are ready now.
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, you know, there's some different approaches that are that. And I think if you can, there's two ways of looking at this. If you can reach your goals by only being very direct and getting the people who are ready to act now to respond to you, and they're going to, on top of that, be only really specific personalities, because even people are ready to list now, often if we're too aggressive or pushy, particularly in Canada, they will not resonate with your message and they won't communicate with you, and you'll lose that opportunity. I don't know too many agents who can build an entire business off of just ready to act now people. If you can, you could go with that approach. To me, it's also unfortunately makes people wary of realtors because people don't love that aggressive approach. So it doesn't help elevate our professionalism, which we feel consultants approach does. So even if you could reach your goals with it, I don't recommend it. But I am pointing out most people cannot. So it's a really dangerous way to approach appointments. I know when we do a lot of tracking for people who are looking to improve their listing conversion from appointment to contract, what we find out is that often, as Shannon said, people are they're booking appointments with people who are too far out in the process, and they're also wasting their listing presentation, because a great, strong listing presentation is designed to be used to create those good feelings, as well as a logical path that makes it easy for people to understand how you're going to help them. It's designed to get them to trust that you have a strategy that's going to get that home sold. So it's not designed to get the listing. It's designed to have an agreed strategy to sell the home. And when you do that, people agree to work with you. So if you use that too early on, you're really taking out what is a very powerful tool in your business. And if you try to use it in the future, I mean, even within 6 to 8 months, they probably aren't going to want to see it again. But even if you did, it's going to have a far diminished return for you. They're not going to have those same good feelings as they would have by actually keeping in touch and waiting to do that presentation. So really important. We want to be in front of people at the right time with the right tools. It actually costs us more business trying to get in front of people too soon when they're not ready to hear our message. So let's move forward to number 4.
And Julia just asked a question. What other questions should I ask to evaluate how serious they are to buy or list?
Yeah, we have, I suggest you have a list of them. I mean, we have full scripts that we do training with. And I mean, I think, you know, you can have a couple tips and tricks in your business and they'll help you, you know, they'll give you a little bit of a benefit, but the systems that Shannon and I work with, they're all the pieces of the puzzle. So it takes a little bit longer to learn them, but the results are exponentially higher because every piece of the puzzle supports the other. So, I mean, you want obvious questions, like you want to know I think some of the questions are going to come up in our top 10, so I don't want to give them all away. But definitely you want some timing questions. You want some questions that are designed to fill space, and those are not wasted questions. A lot of drivers take out the questions that are designed to build rapport. So you want some light questions just to get them talking, to get them feel comfortable with you, to get them off their script. Because everybody who calls you, they have a script, and really great communication is going to allow you to guide the conversation, not control it, guide it, but it's going to get both of you to actually think a little bit deeper. You know, somebody who's really strong on their systems is always listening for those extra points of value that they can only hear because they're not worried about what to say next, right? So I think you're going to hear some of them as we go. So I don't want to give away our points before we get there. But yeah, please post your questions in chat. Shannon can see them and we're more than happy to take a look at them. Shannon, why is this one so important? And I know in your world, you probably want, like, I'm assuming, which I shouldn't do, but I think in our world, for Shannon and I've talked about this aspect before and said that originally I couldn't understand why to train it. And then we had so many issues with this little step that we actually train it all the time now, both on listing side and buyer side. So why is this so vital to actually getting a listing, and why is it such a mistake if we miss it, Shannon?
So what's always important when you're speaking to people is that you're always creating future chains of commitment with people. We often have the tendency to feel like, oh, well, if I'm talking to them on the phone, I don't want to hard close them, and I don't want to make them, feel like we're already picking a time and date to meet. Or if I'm in front of them at the listing presentation, I don't want to hard close them and make them feel like at the end, we'll be signing paperwork, whether it's listing or buying end. I'll just let them know that we'll follow up in a couple of days, and we'll pick a time from then when to get back together. My experience tells me that when you don't make chains of commitment with people, you end up chasing them. People see all the value in you typically once you're there, and they're at the highest point of excitement, the highest point of whether you're there or you're on the phone with them, or like I said, at the grocery store, wherever, and you're speaking to them. They're often feeling that sense of, okay, this person's really nice. I like what they have to say, and they're really excited. And if we don't make that next chain of commitment, what ends up happening is we leave, the feeling fades away, they talk to somebody else, somebody says something that makes them doubt it. So it's important that when we're talking to people that we are getting that chain of commitment of what we're doing next. So in this case, we're talking about that, hey, we've determined that this is somebody I want to meet with. Now we need to figure out what works best for them. Is it going to be days? Is it going to be evenings? Is it weekends? And let's make sure we actually pick what specific day we're going to meet and what specific time. So they're very clear when it is exactly that we're meeting. Now, these days, obviously, that might be virtually, and that's okay to protect their health and safety. But more importantly, who's attending the appointment? I don't want to waste my time by meeting with only one of the decision makers, because it not only is it a waste of my time in a selfish way, for a simple fact that I know if at the end we're about to make the commitment together, they're going to say, I have to speak to my significant other, but for them as well, because it puts them in a position where they're trying to remember all the value that I've told them and tell their significant other everything, and then try to answer all the questions that they might have. So in order to serve them best, it's best that they're both at the appointment, or all three people, or whoever it is, so that we can serve them properly from the very beginning. Is that kind of what you were hoping for, Kathleen?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's the key of, we want to know who we want to meet with, and we want to make sure we get a definitive time, place to meet with the right people, but we don't want to meet with everyone. So it's like the two sides of it. Some people are trying to just meet with everybody and they're getting an appointment, but the majority of those people we shouldn't be meeting with now. But on the flip side, if we know who we should be meeting with, and we have the best chance of helping them, and that they're going to select an agent in the next, 6 to 8 weeks, hopefully after the appointment, then we do want to have a definitive time. And over the years of coaching, like it's interesting, right? Because for Shannon and I, we're so used to a really high volume environment, both in coaching and in practice. When we're selling real estate, it was extremely high volume. So for us, it's interesting because there's two different ways to look at this, right? So when you're doing high volume, you're more likely to see a pattern because you have consistency, and all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, when both homeowners aren't there, or all the decision makers aren't there, I don't get that signature, or I have to go back 3 additional times, and I don't have time to do that. So I need to have a system around this. Whereas when you do a lower volume, you might not notice it as much, or you might think, well, you know what, that was just a one-off, so you don't see the pattern. But ironically, usually for lower volume, those opportunities are worth even more to us. Because for Shannon and I, we were fully booked all the time. So, I mean, if one opportunity didn't happen, I wasn't thrilled about it, but I knew all my conversion numbers, and I was very confident I had many more opportunities I could work with. For our lower volume clients, missing a listing is a huge make or break towards their year goals. It's massive. So we can help because we know the patterns on a higher volume scale that are going to really impact individual agents. So that's why we're emphasizing these things that seem like little things, but they actually are huge when you see tracking across the country, across our network, or even in the businesses we worked in. So yeah, Shannon, that's exactly Thank you. What I wanted to get at. I switched how we presented our points a little bit. I like to keep Shannon and I on our toes. So she's like, you completely changed my language. I'm like, yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, but I knew we knew. It was just because I had more than 10 points, Shannon. So I wanted to kind of merge and make sure
No,
we
that's
covered
fine.
everything. That's why. So number 5, I went to have this was one of those points. I went to go in when I was doing the master list for the top 10, and then Shannon submitted what she felt was, her top most important points. And I realized we were actually missing something that was really key. And I can almost hear Ron James like nodding his head yes right now, because I didn't even assume the fact that some people wouldn't have a listing presentation. For us, the idea of not having one isn't even really on our radar. They are so powerful when it comes to predictably getting more business. They're so powerful to communicate value to potential clients. They're easier for the client to follow you, for them to learn, for them to retain so much more of what you're talking about. It's vital, really, to have a consistent, strong business, to have a listing consultation. So I did add that in. Do you have predictable results from all lead sources right now? That's a great way of looking at it. Some people have really strong repeat and referral business, so they don't really think they need any other tools. But the reality is, the more that our market changes with technology, internet advanced our sales process, but now technology teams are advancing it even more. So if you're 100% repeat and referral business, if you're not also heavily engaged in technology, you don't have your marketing nets out, or you're not contacting your COIs, your entire database very frequently, there's a really high chance that a larger percentage every year are going to end up to talk to a competing team, a competing agent, whatever it is. And we keep getting consult calls about this from agents who are saying, I've never had to compete. I never had a buyer or seller presentation, because these are friends and family. These are past clients. And they always just called me and said, come list my house. Not only were they not being chosen for the listing, but they didn't even know they were competing, because they were assuming that the person was only calling them. And that aspect of our industry is changing. We still have it. There's still people who do the significant or majority of their business from repeat and referral, but they need to be more connected with those people more than ever. And they're using technology to help them, as well as, touch bases and phone calls and things like that. So if you can predictably convert from only your warmest source, but you don't convert as well if you're competing with repeat referral friends and family, or from any online opportunities, open house opportunities, if you're door knocking, really watch that, because a strong listing consultation will give you really high chance of securing that opportunity from any lead source. So we always measure our systems against the most difficult lead sources that give the most predictable high returns. So it's not always, the ones that are our time versus our money. It's the ones that we can create a predictable return. Do you follow a logical path that any seller can follow and easily say yes to? Right? So it's not just the digits in the phone number. This is another Ron James. I'm taking stuff from him today. But it's that the digits are in the right order, so you actually contact the person you're looking to contact. This is really key. I do presentations all the time. Like during COVID, there are days where I've done 6 presentations in one day. I do them all the time. There's a reason why, even if I go off and tell points earlier on, I'm always going to have something in my slides to prompt me, because if I don't, I miss things. And this is really important. I might be in a listing presentation and I might say, some of the points of slide 5 on slide 3, knowing me, I probably did do that. But if I forgot to do it, when I get to slide 5, it's going to prompt me. And that's okay, because I have no problem getting to slide 5 and going, oh, you know what? I got ahead. We already talked about this, but let me just reinforce why it's important, why we have a whole slide to cover this. Or we get to slide 5 and then I just cover it. Either way, I'm going to make sure that I relay that information in an order that's easy for the seller to understand. And a great listing presentation is not built for our comfort. It's really not. It's built for a learning pattern for the client. All of our systems are consultants approach. And what that means is I need to present the information in a way that's easy for the client to absorb it, to follow it, and to see value. That's actually not really a lot to do with the way I want to present it. And I think it's easy in our businesses to say, oh, you know what? I like doing it this way. it's great, but you know, what is going to allow the largest percentage of people to resonate with what you're saying? Because how many of us have built our businesses around our personalities, our learning styles? It's really easy to do that. You know, it's how we naturally communicate. So you want a powerful presentation that is bigger than you. And I'm going to explain what I mean, because if you had Shannon's personality style and Shannon took, and I know she already knows what I'm going to say. So if you have Shannon's personality style and she went out and she created her own listing presentation and she went out with clients because of the height of her personality, like she's a very true to her D personality. If she was just a D in general, she'd be like 11%, 10% of the population. Because she's like a 99, 98% D, she's like 2% of the population. Her Myers-Briggs is the same as mine. It's 0.08% of the female population. She would be eliminating so much of her business without even knowing it, just because she was showing up as herself. And Shannon has immense gifts and genius that the majority of the world just doesn't have. She has beautiful, beautiful gifts, but she also doesn't communicate in a way that the majority of the world does. And neither do I, but I'm using Shannon as an example just because she's someone else, right? So really important. We don't want to kill our market share before we even show up because we're speaking only in our language. This is a huge detriment. So teams do this really well because they need to make sure that they have presentations that are going to work across the board and that the agents are so strong on them that they can adapt to, again, the rapport, the communication, like Shannon said, notice all the upgrades or that the house is meticulous, right? We want all their energy to be focused on things like that. Is your presentation on PowerPoint or Keynote? This is a big one. I still have personally some clients who are using books. Again, if you look at how people take in information and learning style, when you have a book on the table, you're both looking down on that book. It's not as interactive for you. The minute you add more people, it's even more difficult. The winning shape is always the triangle. So the computer allows us to have that perfect triangle where the computer's up, we can flip pages without having an easel, right? And I can be looking at the client, interacting with the client and prompting them when to look at the screen. That is the absolute perfect way to present in a collaborative fashion. So I always want if there's 3 people or 2 people, I want them kind of across from me and the computer would represent, you know, the tip of the triangle. So I don't want the 2 people across from a boardroom table. We'll see in the future how that looks. And myself at the end. On Zoom, it's great because everybody's looking in together and you're going to prompt them with the presentation. But in real life, the digital presentation is going to be a lot more interactive for you. Even with seniors, if you have a lot of pictures and your type is big, I've had in my experience only once when I closed my listing presentation. And to be honest, it was more because I was talking too fast. And I think the rate of speech that I needed to slow down in combination with the PowerPoint was a little bit much. So we closed it and I just slowed way down, still got the listing, all was well. But that's very, very rare. In general, we say when you close your presentation, you've lost because you're not able to relay your value and you're going to get to a point where you're going to talk about commission or they're going to have questions. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions you would have answered in your presentation. So it's just messy, messy, messy. So we want to be able to have it on a PowerPoint or Keynote if you're a Mac user and actually have it on your screen. Now with Zoom, it's going to make your life so much easier because book style is going to have too much type. And when you're like copy, right? Too many words. So when you're going through it, it's going to be way too dense for a Zoom style platform. So I highly recommend you go to an actual PowerPoint or a Keynote. Not having that is definitely affecting your conversion if you're meeting with enough different types of people. Also, do you have a script? So you may want a script for a couple of reasons. I have a presentation I really love. I did pieces of it here and it's called Consultant's Approach. And I know that when I go back and I look at footage of when I first did that presentation, I really love it because I had so many vivid examples from different movies and different books and things like that. And I never wrote a script for that presentation because I used to just do it all the time. So at one point I saw the older version of the presentation and then I saw the most recent one. They're both really good, but they're really different. And I kind of missed some of those examples that were more heart examples. And they were the examples that inspired the presentation in the first place. So, you know, if I ever were to do a massive update to it, I'd actually go back to the original footage because I think it was stronger and it connected with people more then. But unfortunately, I didn't write a script for it. And the exact same thing happens for all of us, that the more we present something, we change it. Our memories are actually never consistent. So if I was taught something, let's say I was taught a PowerPoint presentation today, and, you know, let's just say miraculously, I was able to learn it in one day. And then I took a whole course on psychology and learning styles. And I read a book about, you know, how people perceive information. And then I went to present it again. I'm now going to see what I learned through my new knowledge, through my new memories. Why am I telling you this? Because if you learn something today and you go back and you tape yourself, like Ron James was talking about game filming, like 3 months from now, you will have drastically changed that presentation. And it might be for the good, but I'm going to tell you, in coaching experience for Shannon and I, you usually only realize how much you've changed it because your results start to go down. And you start to go, I don't understand what's going on. Like, I'm using the same presentation. Like, we hear it all the time. I'm using the same scripts. Like, nothing's changed. Why am I not booking things? And then Shannon, you go back to the recording, and let's say it's a phone call. It's a script we knew on the phone. And we're like, why are we booking so many less appointments? What do we actually hear on the recording versus what our brain's telling us?
Well, our brain tells us we're definitely perfect and right on. But what I end up finding out is that usually it's one change that's been something so minute that's been altered, but they're consistently doing it every single time. So an example of that is, I had somebody who said, like, was booking tons of appointments, they were all meeting, everything was great, and then all of a sudden nobody was showing up anymore. And she came to me, she said, I just don't understand what I'm doing wrong. I'm completely on script, something's wrong, maybe the scripts aren't working. I said, well, what do you mean? Well, I'm on script and nobody's showing up anymore. Maybe, you know, the values changed. I said, all right. I said, let's take a minute. And I said, let's listen to some of your recordings. Sure enough, I'm listening to her whole call and she's completely on script. I'm thinking, oh man, this is bad. Then sure enough, she gets to the close and she starts to get really wishy-washy. So then rather than just a strong close of, hey, here's what we're doing next, what works best, days or evenings, weekends, it was, well, you know, what we usually do next is we just like to meet because we just want to make sure that we do this and we want to make sure that we just do that. And then she was justifying it so much that the whole confidence she had built up and the comfortableness, that's not even a word, but anyway, and the whole call that she had built up, all of a sudden people are like, yeah, this is amazing. Then she gets to the close and she starts justifying. And psychologically, they're feeling a level of dissonance of, hey, this sounded good, but why are they seeming like they're unsure about it? Okay, well, I'm not sure about it, but I guess I'll agree because it seemed like it was good. And then they end up dropping off and not showing. But sure enough, every single call, she was right on until that point and became wishy-washy and justified. And the minute she tweaked that to be a confident close, her show-ups went right back up.
Yeah, our tone and our language communicates so much, right? Absolutely. That's such a great example. It's like that wishing, hoping, what is the other word? Confirming. This is all language you want to avoid. Wishing, hoping, confirming, and just. Just is not a great language. It's going to diminish it. These little things create massive signals to the people listening to you. So if you record yourself, listen back, particularly if you're doing reminder calls, those are the death of your appointments. If you're using that language, you're pretty much inviting them to cancel with you. And if it's colder business, that's relevant. If they're about to list, they may not, but it still isn't going to give a great impression.
Or even the words tentatively,
yes,
or I'll pencil you in, or usually we do this, typically. Now you're making things seem like they're options, and I don't book options. I book something solid.
Even with clients, I know when they'd say that to me, Shannon, okay, I'll pencil in, or yeah, it should work. I'm like, well, I'm reserving this time specifically for you and I'm booked right before and after. So are you sure? Just because I needed to hold my time, right? It was just important. So I love that you brought that up.
I take it offensively if people say they're penciling me in. I'm like, what do you mean you're penciling me in? So you're not committing to me? Like you're telling
No, Shannon's not a D at all. Not at all. Okay. So Shannon, right place, right time, right order. What do we need to do? Like some people show up at an appointment, they don't even know that they're competing. Does it matter? Right now in COVID, we want to be first in line when I was out in the wind waiting for the grocery store. But is that always the way that we want to do it?
Not really. And I think this is always a big debate
Yeah.
when we're training people, is when people are interviewing at more than one agent, do you come in first, do you come in last? There's some people who run based on their ego and they say, well, I'm going to come in first, I'm going to build such great rapport, they're not going to want to meet with anybody. And I think at some point in the past, that mentality probably worked more than I find that it does now. I find now there's a lot more people where information is very relevant. They can find information very easily, and they want to compare what they're getting regardless of what you say first. And the reality is if I come in first, I don't want it to be that I've killed it, I've done this amazing presentation, then at the end of it, I ask for a commitment and they say to me, well, we can't really commit to you because we're going to be meeting with other agents and we want to know what they have to say first. Because what's going to happen is I leave and I think I'm at a 10 with their value. We really clicked, everything's great. The minute I leave, and this is just human nature, everything that I said to get them excited starts to get lesser and lesser and lesser, because now they've got other people saying, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And they start to forget the value that I had. Or worse, maybe they heard my commission options and now the next person comes in, they might not have sounded as great, but they're only 1%. And they think, oh, do we need that great person or do we rather a commission cut, right? And they start second guessing. Whereas if I can come in last, after they've had a chance to hear everybody else, now I have put myself in a position where I could go for the close at the end because I know they're not interviewing any more people. And better yet, I may hear little clues from their interviewing the other agents that they didn't like, that now I can make sure I make up for in my presentation to make sure they're happy.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So at the right, I think I have an alarm going off, but it's not a real alarm. They're hardwired. Oh, it stopped. Okay, good. I was going to say, I might have to go look at that. All right. So we want to be right place, either buyer appointment or seller appointment, path of least resistance, or at their house at the right time, in the right order, and with the right people present, right? So we want to even have the questions, like it was asked before, to make sure we have an awareness if we're competing or not, because some people assume and they assume wrong, and then they show up, they didn't even know, and they're already at a disadvantage. And then once you know if you're competing, you want to have a strategy. Can you hear it?
I'm sorry. I know.
It's hardwired, right? But I know there's something going
on out there.
No, it's been acting up. It's not real. The house is not burning down. It's okay.
Oh, that's your fire alarm.
It's doing something because the person upstairs is okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So right people at the right time. I think it's done. We'll see. And I'm going to make sure. Hold on a sec. There we go. And Shannon, I know this was your number one that came up. Like when we started brainstorming, this was the first one that you said. So I'm going to let you chat about this because I think it was really cool that Shannon picked this, coming from a place where she's booking the appointments and I was out with appointments and training the agents on this aspect, but this was her number one of cost her the most listings for the appointment she booked.
For sure. Because as I mentioned, like as I got so well adept at booking appointments, I kind of got to the point as high as I could go within inside sales. So I started to pivot to more the outside sales aspects. Yeah. And to start doing that at very first was shadowing a lot of other agents on the team to see that other end of it before I could learn it on my own. And what I realized was when they got in front of clients, if they knew the scripting of the listing presentation by heart, they could wake up in the sleep and say it. They knew our value. They knew where we ranked in the community. They knew how many deals we did per year. They knew why we were the best person for them to list with in order to get top dollar. They killed it and got the listing. But when they didn't really know that listing presentation and they were hoping the screen was going to prompt them just enough to trigger their memory, what would happen is they were so focused on what they were going to say next that the clients would be sitting there saying little things and they would go, oh yeah, I understand. And they go on to their next point when really had they had paid attention to what the person was saying, they missed a huge opportunity to build a rapport. And often they had answered something you were going to ask later in the presentation. And had you have listened, you could have built better rapport later when you got to it by saying, and I remember you mentioning that blah, 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 blah was important to you. And they would miss those opportunities, therefore fully breaking rapport, and in the end wouldn't get the listing presentation because the person just felt like they weren't being listened to, nor did that salesperson feel they even really believed in what they were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So huge to have that, like, to confidently present, we have to have it fully internalized, which is, you know, the second part of this point is that, you know, do we know where and why we need to pause and check in with the client and get agreements with the client and ask questions, because that's taking you to that fourth level of communication. So it's really important to ask those little questions. You know, does this make sense? Is this resonating with you? Do you have any questions for me? I know this is a really different way of doing this. Does it make sense why we do it this way? Anything like that. It's not necessarily trial closes. I'm not a believer in them. I don't believe in hard closes. I don't believe in trial closes. I really believe, both in my experience in real estate, but also with tracking across our network, that being a master communicator and actually educating people and letting them make their own decisions is a beautiful path of least resistance. It's much more comfortable for the client. And when we don't put that huge push at them, they don't have to push back at us. And anything that's going to create a dynamic in your listing presentation of you against them is not not leading you to a positive position for pricing or commission. So agreements are enough. It does not have to be a trial close. A lot of people have been trained, and naturally their ears go up when they hear trial closes, because they feel them to be manipulative. And a lot of people do use them in manipulative ways, unfortunately. Second is layering. If you have important points, you don't want to just say them once. You need to strategically say them in different ways. Most people need to hear something 3 times for it even to start to really sink in and resonate with them. The other thing is, if you're competing, you have other agents who are using real estate speak, right? Or real estate talk, and it starts to all sound really generic. So we need to layer on and emphasize how what we're doing is different, if it is, and make sure that they understand the bottom line value. So D driver personalities and listings usually do better for that simple reason that they're going to take a bunch of information and they're going to bottom line organize it. And that allows the client to actually follow them and see why it's a benefit to them, which is really, really important. So we want to layer information and bottom line. Here's why I'm telling you this. Here's why it's super important. Does this make sense? Is this important to you as well? Right? Like going down those extra layers. And as I said, key points. If you read a great buyer consultation or listing consultation script, you will hands down think certain aspects are repetitive. You 100% will. And if you're not connected to the results that that tool creates, or you don't understand, you know, the strategy of why it was written. I've had so many clients butcher their listing presentations, their buyer presentations. I had a top team take the presentation and just rip it apart and then ask me to train their people. And I wouldn't, because everything that made the presentation powerful was taken out, and the order that created a predictable response was gone. And everyone who tried to use the presentation didn't have great results with it, except the 1 or 2 listing agents who had already been top agents for years and years with the old presentation. So what was happening, they were bringing remnants and doing what they always did anyways, but the new people didn't have all those points because they were never taught it. So key points are really, really important. And the strategy of your presentation, there is a science to it. So you want to get it down in a way that makes sense, again, for the seller, and gets you a really predictable response. So we want to make sure that everything we're presenting, like Shannon said, chain of commitment, is getting a buy-in or planting seeds of value towards points we're going to talk about later in the presentation. So we're literally always layering so that we're prepping the seller's mindset before we even get there. It's like we're creating a perspective before they ever make any decisions, which is a really powerful thing to do as a listing agent. Number 8, Shannon, pricing strategy. Where does it go wrong with pricing?
So so a couple places it goes wrong is I'll often see where agents will walk into the appointment already knowing the price that they want to list it at. And they'll kind of get it stuck in their mind, and then they'll come in thinking, you know what, if this house could really should sell at 500, you know, I'm going to sell them 530 to just tell them it's 530 to try and, you know, get the listing. And they try to kind of buy listings. And the problem with that is when you're owning a sale price, when it doesn't sell for that price, the client is going to blame you. Whereas the approach we come from is educate them on the comparables that are out there, help them to arrive at a price, okay, so that they own the price, not you. Here's the other thing too, where I would see it go wrong is if the client, after educating them why we want to hit the market at the right price first, okay, they've decided, you know what, I appreciate that, but I still want to list for, 25,000, 30 over, because I really want to try my price first, because, I just feel like I would regret it if it sold at 500 and I felt like it could go for 530. What if I could have got 530? Okay. And you just can't talk them off the point. Where I would see it fall short is having the agent have an inability to agree upon predetermined price reductions. So, okay, that's fine. We'll try your price. But hey, by this time, if it doesn't sell for that price, we agree to move down to this price. And sometimes they'd end up walking out of the appointment just saying, well, we couldn't agree on price and that was it, versus coming up with a strategy of, hey, fine, based on all the information I told you of statistically why you should price it correctly, you still want to try it over. So here's the strategy of how we're going to do that, so you don't end up with a listing where you just don't make enough money on it. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. And the time, when we add up the amount of time that we spend, first of all, we didn't put it in our top 10 because it didn't come in our top 10. But then when you add the time it takes, if you're doing multi-step listing presentations, and Lucia brought this up as one of the top reasons that people don't get the listing or we waste our time. We have multiple visits to sign up that listing. A great system is going to get you walking through the house, your listing presentation, pricing, commission, paperwork, multiple prices on paper, all within 2 hours. If it's a high-end home, a custom home, very specific or unique rural property, then yes, we would definitely do 2 appointments because we need to take some more time with the property. It would backfire otherwise. But the other side of this is if the house doesn't sell, how much time are we taking, going back repeatedly to be in front of those sellers, let alone if we're not in front of those sellers and we're just making phone calls and we're going, oh, they're not willing to change their price. Now the home's sitting on the market and it's not doing anything positive for the seller or us. And we've done, 8 or 9 tenths of the process to get to the home sale, but we're just not able to have enough influence at that last piece. So one of the things that I really focused on, because again, I was limited in time, and so efficiency was important. Every single listing for the past, I'd probably say 3.5 or 4 years that I was selling full time, I had it priced either for multiple offers or I had predetermined price reductions for every single one. And agents would not get their head around this. Sometimes they'd think, well, doesn't the seller think that you don't really believe it'll sell for more? I'm like, I don't take ownership of the market. That's irrelevant. We've looked at all the strategy. I've showed them everything I can do to educate myself on their price. They've seen it as well. They've picked the price range. They know they want to test the market at the higher end if they even choose to do that. And if they don't, I still did a predetermined price reduction. Why? Because I legitimately didn't want to take ownership of the market. I knew markets could shift, they could change. And I always wanted to have a backup plan to ensure that I could do more business in less time with happier clients. That's what I wanted to do. Sellers are happier dealing with pricing up front. They are not nearly as happy when we come back 3, 4. I remember in 2008, I think I had one seller that I was back in front of like 10 times. And that's not happy, right? That's not happy for them. That's not happy for me. I mean, that was just the market. It was difficult. And in the end, we got the house sold. But even with them at the beginning, thank goodness, we had a couple of predetermined prices. So, is it better to lose out the listing to somebody else who's going to buy the listing, get the seller down? The seller's going to be frustrated, but they're going to be in a contract. Or is it better to get to as close as you can within a bubble that, is reasonable, and then have a strategy on paper that will take you into an area that you're much more likely to hit market value based on your research. So really, really important to have those types of pricing strategies for teams. Again, they're vital in a buyer's market, mixed market, even in a seller's market. If you have new people who are not that confident on pricing, they will really help protect your marketing dollars for sure. And individual agents, obviously, just as important. Okay, so we're getting there. Number 9 is all about commission, Shannon. So we do a good job. We agree on pricing. Pricing presentations went well. How do we lose the listing when it comes to commission rates?
I think some of it definitely has to do with an internal belief of your commission structure. I think that there's some times where we have commission options that people pick from. And I think that if the agent doesn't believe in one of the packages because they feel it's too high based on the value people are getting, even though they might be saying the right words, they're not going to convince somebody that it's the right amount of commission to pay, or they just have an inability to describe why the commission package they're going to pay is worth it. I think I pretty much just said the same thing. But the reality is people only have an issue with what they pay if they don't see the value and why they have to pay it. So I would see agents often lose it at that point because they'd have an inability to explain what is the value and what you're getting for this specific package.
Yeah. And if I
Does
don't
that
feel,
make sense?
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
If I don't feel confident myself, right, I can start, dropping commission before we even get into it. They can have a weird pause or body language. And I go, I think I'm not going to get the listing, and I drop it. And if you're doing that before they're even asking, let alone when they do, it's just like any other habit. You're 10 times more likely to do it again the next time. So it's not usually a one-off, even though we tell ourselves that. What I notice over the years with clients is if they start to deviate a little bit, it becomes a pattern, and we have to actually like fully course correct it back. It's very rare that it's just one-off that we do that. So it's going to mirror us, right? How confident we feel about what we're doing, our ability to explain our value. They're going to mirror back to us. And if they don't feel that we're confident or we're sure about commission, they're going to make that a point of negotiation. And I know for me and the people I support, that's not an area we want to get into negotiation. We've just done a presentation. We've just gone through pricing together collaboratively. We focus on giving choices and options that are pre-done. In our system, we do that very effectively. We have some people who just stick to a set percentage, but human nature, if you get any drivers, you're much better off giving them some logical options to pick from that are different based on, what you're paying for those services or other metrics that we work with our clients to organize it. So, power of choice creates a logical focus where the seller is saying which one instead of if I'm going to work with you, which is really powerful. We're changing the playing field altogether. So it's like the other agents offering 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, doesn't matter, whatever. They're on a different playing field because all of them are just a number. We're offering different packages. They're going to pick which one. We've already agreed on everything else. After that, it's just closing date, which is going to be our next point that is really important, which is one of the biggest mistakes people make with listings. And I think Shannon hit it on the head. Some things that were more acceptable or more successful even in real estate, 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, are not anymore. And these aggressive techniques are really not seen with a kind eye by most clients. And what we find again is there's a reason why consultants do far more business, because they work with the client. They advocate for the client instead of trying to make it us against them. And you're going to lose a ton of business if you're aggressively pushing somebody at the end of the appointment, either because they sign and they want out later and they complain, or because they just shut down because they're overwhelmed. So the best close is actually no close. And what do I mean by that? I mean that just like the buyer consultation, we built a bridge where we've already agreed on all the aspects of our strategy to get the house sold. This is so important. I'm not focusing on getting your listing. I'm focusing on creating a powerful strategy with you that's going to get this house sold. And by the end of my consultation, we've already agreed on that entire strategy. We're ready to go. We've agreed on all the terms and all the dates and who they're going to talk to first. It's all done. I filled it out as we've went. So we've completed the process already. All I need to ask about now is the date to get it on the market. I'm going to make recommendations about that, and I'm going to start to fill out paperwork. So really, really strong listing agents, it's like this beautiful harmony that all just kind of flows, and you'll have objections at predictable places in the system. So it makes it so much easier for us to overcome them, or for us to start to break down pricing and, do a net sheet and things like that, because we're not going to get hit with all the objections at once. We're going to isolate our presentation from pricing, from commission, and then any extra hesitations at the end are usually to do with, they're considering somebody else, like Shannon said, there's some type of, they think they're going to do better off with a cut commission, or somebody promised they have a buyer. It's usually something like that. and it's like the elephant in the room. So we have techniques to kind of talk about it. But end of the day, a powerful presentation is going to have you agreed on that strategy and getting the signature while you're still there at the very first appointment. So that's our last one. That's the big one. And Shannon, I know we both had kind of like our big overview, you know, top bonus. When we thought about this, like where are the majority of mistakes coming from? So when you think about like overview, all your experience right now, what comes to mind of a bonus of like, this is what's costing people their listings?
I think that the mistakes begin before even the appointment's met. For me, I think that the biggest amount of mistakes come on the actual call or meeting with, not meeting, but wherever it is that you're encountering this opportunity, the mistakes start happening there. And whether it's that you don't know how to convey your value and what you can, like just having a value proposition for a potential seller, and rather than having a value proposition, your way to get in the door is saying, you know what, why don't you meet with me? I'll cut you a real good deal on, you know, commission or whatever it is. And you start kind of bringing up things that are going to backfire your appointment later, to the point where who knows if you're going to even make any money on this listing, because you've already walked in cutting commission off the beginning. Yeah, so I think whether it's that or it's that you're booking it outside of the time frame, I just think a lot of mistakes are made before you even get in the door. You've just said too much. You've showed too many cards that when you get in the door, there's no wow factor. You've already you've said just too much.
Yeah, for sure. And same, like when I track it, of all the listings we don't get, 80% come from mistakes on the phone. Like it's something we didn't know. It's something we didn't ask. We weren't positioned right. The right person wasn't there. We didn't know we were competing. So much so that even for top listing agents who were doing a ton of production, we would find again that they were booking and using their listing presentation way too early. So one of the most powerful things we do with, increasing listing inventory is actually, again, going with the path of least resistance, having the right questions to ask to know which appointment to book first. So we have other steps we take that build rapport very, very well. So they call it an early listing appointment, so that we actually get a commitment with the client and we're able to have a huge advantage to get the listing later. And it was amazing because it took opportunities where they were showing up, they were doing a full listing presentation, they were losing the listing, and even though they did a high production of business, and it turned that into an opportunity where those were now early on sellers that we nurtured in a different way that created a surplus of, or additional listings, I should say, surplus over their usual later on as we put that system into place. So that was really, really powerful for us. And we want to always, like, these are open masterminds. So open masterminds, we're focused on, you know, what you need to do, top things that are going to give you value, you know, tangible strategies in your business. In our workshop, we go into what to do and a little bit more of how to do it and why to do it. So we take you through and give you some of our tangible resources. In coaching, we actually coach you on implementing it, making sure you have our perspective, things like that. So next week, I know we had some questions on the mastermind. Next week on Thursday, we do have a workshop. So it's our ultimate listing system workshop. And our listing presentation, you can buy it from us. To buy the core listing presentation, which is a PowerPoint, it's $599. But I'm going to tell you what the workshop is because it includes the PowerPoint and we only do them once a year. So we did our buyer one last month and we're doing our listing one next Thursday. So the presentation is going to specifically show your clients the benefit of either working with a team approach or a boutique individual business. It is customizable to either. It is not team specific. Second, the unique systems you use. Third, specialized knowledge. Fourth, exclusive and innovative consumer programs. And fifth, the leading edge technology that you work with. At the end of the consultation, we want the seller to be overwhelmed with value, but also focused on a strong strategy. So they really trust that together working with you, they're going to be able to sell their home and they're looking to get started. So again, the focus isn't on hiring you or not. The focus is on, hey, I feel good about this. Like we have a strategy in place. Let's get started. So that's one of the core tools that people look to work with us, you know, with coaching or workshops to get, because we've already used it extensively. So it is tried, tested, and true, and it is duplicatable as long as you take the time to learn it, obviously. So this workshop is going to cover a few things. I'm going to go through it kind of quickly, and Shannon, you can tell me if there's questions maybe at the end. So key COVID updates, you know, how are we adapting this, which we are quite well remote. The ultimate core listing consultation, which is a PowerPoint, so you can customize it for yourself. 5 steps that are going to give you a 30% advantage before you start the presentation. It's so critical. How you do the phone call will give you a 30% advantage. If you don't do it right, it gives you an 80% disadvantage. As I said, 80% of the listings we don't get come from problems on the phone. Seller phone scripts and extra questions to ensure you have that 30% advantage. We're going to give you that. Predetermined price adjustment system, which is what saved me hours and hours per listing. It also allowed me in the final 3.5 years selling full time to sell every single listing that I put on the market, which I was extremely happy about. Ultimate commission advantage, how we secure an extra point 60% of the time or more. And 8 hours, obviously, of training, hands-on role play. This workshop will be meeting style. So we can do breakout rooms and you guys can try things and do some role play, which will be great. Shannon will be there with me as well. And you're having the ability to leverage, obviously, our system, which is the system mindset and the tools that are behind North America's top teams and top agents. These are the systems that they train on and they use for their onboarding. I use this to sign over 80% of every listing that I worked with. And as well, far more, I think it was like over 90% were listing with me with a gold package, which is 1% above what we typically think of as a normal commission fee, which I can't say anything more specific because we're not allowed to, but you guys can read between those lines. We will cover the following tools in this workshop. So ultimate listing system, how success starts on the phone with the scripts, the consultation, building a winning presentation in case you want to adapt some of ours into yours or create something custom, consulting strategies for pricing and fee. We do not do traditional approach to pricing and fee, and I don't do it because our numbers show us it does not convert as well. So we use consultant's approach for price and fee, which we'll talk about. The logic approach when it comes to educating our sellers so they pick realistic prices, exposure and using that to master the sale, how to communicate exposure to sellers, and obviously the presentation as well. So it is next Thursday. They put my picture, but Shannon's going to be there too, which is fantastic, at least for part of it. And for our KBCC clients, you know, we've dropped the price huge because we just want you to go. If you haven't mastered this system, it is so vitally important. If you have team members who have not mastered this system, just sign them up. It's $99. It's usually $299 for our coaching clients. If you're a coaching client, just sign up. For the public, we discounted it as well. So usually to buy the listing presentation, it's $599. For you to come to the whole workshop with us and get the presentation, it's $349. So I think you guys know who have been here daily. We've tried to do a lot of give back for COVID, and this is continuing with that theme, but these are actual resources we're giving to you to use. So there is a cost associated because obviously our clients are paying to have access to those as well. On our website, you can go to events and pick listing workshop and you can read additional information. You can read testimonials. On our last buyer's workshop, we actually had somebody get a lead in the morning. They waited to called them at lunch and used the script they learned in the morning and booked an appointment right there, which was absolutely amazing. And they did the Zoom consultation with them that weekend and signed that buyer. So that was really, really amazing for us to experience. So that was pretty powerful. I didn't expect that, but I had to share it because obviously I was really happy about it. We will also send the link out. Oh, if you have questions, you can email info@kathleenspeaks.com, but we will send the link out to register for a spot on that workshop. It is online. You do want to have your video and your audio open all day. You will get an email with pre-work, including the PowerPoint presentation and some scripts. So you'll have them in advance and you can start to work with them then. And they're going to help you sift and sort who to even spend the time trying to get on Zoom with right now versus a follow-up. Shannon, any questions we should cover before we wish everybody well until tomorrow?
No, I don't think so, other than I just see some people messaging either me personally or to the group. If you do want to sign up for it, you can either call the office number, which is forwarded to me anyway, or you can email me at shannon@kathleenspeaks.com rather than info, because poor Stacy gets about 900 emails a day.
Good point. Well, so we're going to email it out too. Like if you get the recording from today, I think Stacy's on here. She'll put the link. Yeah, she'll put the link and you guys can book right there too. But yeah, emailing Shannon is a great idea.
Yeah, either one to help Stacy.
Thank you.
You can Facebook message her. You can Instagram message Shannon. Any way.
Whatever you want.
I'm just bugging her. I'm just bugging her. She's like, thanks, Kathleen. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, all kidding aside, we work on Facebook Messenger as a team, so we're always on there. So with that, I'm excited because last time we had an amazing group for the buyer workshop. Their only feedback was that I gave them too much information, which I kind of laughed. So I'm going to try to make sure that we have more breaks this time, but I needed to add the COVID updates last time. So I took what was already a full workshop and then I added COVID because I didn't want you guys to miss out on anything. So that's actually what happened. That's why there was so much information. So Shannon's coming on to keep me on track and make sure I don't exhaust you guys.
Don't worry, I'll get to the point.
Yeah, Shannon will get to the point. So tomorrow we have Barry Lebo. We have a full interview. He's going to be talking about how to price listings in any market, even when you don't have, it's a transitioning market. We don't have very recent sales activity. He's going to talk about what he's learned from past crisis markets, different markets in the 80s when we got hit. He has such a vast amount of experience in this business. We have so much respect for him coming on. And he's going to just share some about him. And if you've never seen Barry talk, he is full of life. He will take up so much space and make you laugh and smile. And he'll also make sure you learn a lot. So definitely that's not one to be missed tomorrow with Barry. Thursday, Sandra and Lucia from our team are going to be taking you through how to do a perfect week, work with your time with these COVID adjustments, which a lot of our clients have really needed. So we want to help you with that as well. And Friday, super special. We've got East to West, full Canadian panel with 3 people representing the West Coast and 3 agents or teams representing the East Coast. So they have a lot to share and they have a lot from their markets coming into COVID that was very different that they're going to share to help everybody now and coming out of it. So that's going to be actually really, really special on Friday. Great way to end our week. All right. So we'll wish everybody a fantastic, excellent night. And hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye for now.